Hey guys, welcome to our spoiler review of La Belle Sauvage, the first book in the trilogy that is going to be The Book of Dust by Philip Pullman. So we were bad people. We wrote this review a long time ago when the book basically first came out. We read it right away, and then for some reason we just have not filmed it. Anyways, for some reason she forgot everything.
Everything.
Like, there's a lot of shit that just, like, bodies hit the floor, like, crazy ass shit that would be memorable.
All I remember is that there's a flood and then, like, fairies show up and we kind of, like, leave reality onto this magical quest. And it's not like I didn't like the book. I really liked the book. I really enjoyed the book. It's just kind of, like, got deleted somehow.
Yeah, and I'm not used to being the one who remembers shit.
That's my job.
I have a terrible memory. So I'm gonna do my best. I'm gonna do what I normally do and remember how much I normally remember. And you're gonna act surprised.
I'm gonna see if it, like, jogs anything, because as we film this review, I had some pretty wonderful reactions.
Sure. La Belle Sauvage follows a boy named Malcolm, and he lives in an inn with his parents. He's pretty happy. His parents have, like, a serving girl who shows up every once in a while and does the dishes. Her name is Alice. They kind of don't like each other, especially at the beginning. Alice thinks he's a child and kind of wants nothing to do with him. Malcolm's just like, well, you're stuck up and I don't care. They kind of get thrown together by circumstance because she works there. The more things happen in the book, the more she kind of starts to confide in him, and then they get stuck together. And then by the end of the book, they end up liking each other. Anyways, so Malcolm and his parents live in this inn, and across the river there's a nunnery. And Malcolm is, like, friends with the nuns. He goes over and he helps them out whenever they need something. You know, life is good. And he also has this canoe, which he named La Belle Sauvage because his uncle had a boat or something named that, and he just really liked the name. This boat is like his baby. He takes care of it, he paints the name on it. When, like, it gets damaged, he fixes it, and so he takes care of this boat. Now, there's shit going on in London. The religious order, the Magisterium, is fighting with the government and the people because they want more control, and Mrs. Coulter is all in that. But the big thing that happens is somebody goes in and they take Lyra from Lord Asriel and they put Lyra in this nunnery. And in this nunnery, Malcolm goes over and he, like, starts helping take care of the baby, and he starts, like, liking her, like, you know, like a big brother. He's just, like, in love with her. He's just like, oh my god, I love this kid. So cute, so smart, brilliant, she's gonna be a genius, fuck it, I love it. As much as they tried to hide Lyra away in this convent, things followed her. One of the things that followed her is Charles Bonneville. And Bonneville is a scuzzbag. He is, like, the sleaziest, darkest, dirtiest, grossest motherfucker you've ever encountered in a YA novel, and you're just reading, like, this, like, holy shit, this is the villain, oh my god. If you know anything about the Golden Compass, demons are sacred, they are a part of you, they're your soul. When you hurt, they hurt. When they hurt, you hurt. Somebody touching your demon is, like, the grossest, like, most disgusting, low-down, taboo thing you could ever do. This guy has a three-legged hyena who he regularly beats. So you're just like, oh my god, what is wrong with this man? And, like, he's said to be, like, really, like, charming, and you know he's a scuzzbag underneath, but you can't help but like him when he's talking to you, and he just knows how to be charming. But then you look at his hyena, which is, like, ugly and gross and dirty, and you're like, wow. And so this guy starts skulking around Lyra, and Malcolm kind of sees it, but nobody else kind of really notices. So he's like, oh, there's a problem here. And he finds out that Bonneville has a grudge against Miss Coulter for some reason that was never really clear to me. But he wants Lyra so he can, like...
Doesn't he kill a guy on a bridge?
Oh yeah, he definitely does.
Okay, I remember it. I'm relevant.
Word gets out that Lord Asriel wants to get over to the nunnery. I can't remember how, but this happens. So Malcolm ends up running into Lord Asriel, and he's like, okay, well, you know, if you want to, she's over there, if you want to, like, use my boat, use my boat. He takes Lord Asriel, like, very secretly over to the nunnery so he can go in and check on Lyra. Lord Asriel knocks on the window, startles the nuns, and then he, like, hangs out with Lyra for a little bit, and, like, oh, my baby. So he has, like, some emotion for Lyra, and he, like, is concerned about her well-being, which is something you do not get from the first book. I thought that was really weird. And I was like, I was fine with him just being, like, a powerful asshole who's got, like, bigger things on his mind than his little girl. I was cool with that. So now he's suddenly, like, kind of portrayed as this, like, caring father who's been, like, separated from his daughter, and I'm like, I don't like this.
Who are you? And doesn't he take Malcolm's boat?
Yeah, he does take Malcolm's boat, and he's like, don't worry, I'll get it back to you. And so he takes Malcolm's boat down the river to escape from the people who've realized that
He's there.
He's there. And Malcolm's like, okay, well, that happened. And then, like, couple days, like 5 days later, in comes Farter Coram, who is, like, our old pal and, you know, good friends with Lyra down the road. And he brings the boat back, and he's like, okay, well, we made some modifications to it, like the Egyptians. We made it better, we made it stronger. We could use a tarp for it, like a thing, or like a rain tarp so you won't get wet, and you know, it's more waterproof, and you know, all the good things. And like, Lord Asriel thanks you, and if you ever need his help, you know, just give him a call. And also there's a big flood coming, so be warned. And Malcolm's like, okay, well, I believe this guy, like he's clearly knows what he's talking about. I'll tell my parents, and nobody seems to really take me seriously. Okay. Meanwhile, Malcolm is like in the park one day. He sees this guy acting really suspiciously, and he like drops something, and he's looking around for it, but he doesn't seem to find it, and he walks off. So Malcolm's like, maybe I'm gonna find it.
Oh, the fucking acorn!
Yeah!
Yeah! Another point for me!
Yeah! So he and his demon, they're kind of like where the guy was standing, and they realized that the guy was being followed, and so they're like, okay, well, I'm gonna take this acorn, and I'm gonna see if I can figure out where it belongs. And so I think he opens it, and he figures out where this thing belongs, and turns out that it was a message for a scholar who lives kind of nearby. She's like a nice lady, but she has an Alethiometer, and she's been using it for the government.
Does she teach him how to read? Or could he read? He could read before because he came out, but she's teaching him something, though.
She's kind of teaching him about the Alethiometer and, like, the symbols and stuff like that. And she's like, oh, you kind of have a knack for it. Like, you know, maybe you want to study this later on, but, like, don't tell people about this. And he's like, okay. You know, she has connections to the government. At one point, Mrs. Coulter kind of realizes that this woman is like in this government circle, and she like shows up at her door to like talk to her and suss out kind of what she knows. And Malcolm's there, so he kind of gets to meet Mrs. Coulter. And it's really creepy, but she kind of goes away, and she doesn't quite realize how important this scholar is. Meanwhile, Mrs. Coulter is fucking shit up in the schools. Mrs. Coulter is doing whatever the fuck it is she does. PR, I don't know. But she's like, I have this brilliant fucking idea. Hitler Youth. But like, not Hitler Youth, obviously. So she goes to the schools and she's like, hey kids, do you ever see your parents doing things they shouldn't be doing? Or do your teachers ever teach you things that are against what the church is teaching you? Yeah, we're gonna start this little society, and you know, if you want to join, that's great, please join. And you know, there's a couple of ranks, so you can move up the ranks, but you know, if you see anything, you should tell us.
Did they get rid of the headmaster because of this?
No, I think they get rid of a couple of the teachers, but the headmaster is like just kind of like sitting there like, gotta placate the youth, gotta placate the youth, gotta placate the youth. So naturally, yeah, things go to shit. Like, kids start turning on their parents. They start bullying the teacher over little things. A couple of teachers just kind of like disappear because the Magisterium has gotten them and taken them away. Kids started doing it as a joke, but then they kind of get like indoctrinated into it, and they're like, well, if you're not with us, then we can't tell you things. And like they start like forming up and like becoming this little society of like snitches, and it's wow. Malcolm is kicking around. He sees Bonneville kicking around. At one point, Bonneville's hyena demon just pees in front of Malcolm, and it's like a, I fucking see you, and this is what I think of you kind of moment. You're like, what?
Didn't remember that.
At one point, he's spying on Bonneville, and Bonneville is like fucking a nun in a shed.
What the fuck?
Yeah, that happened. I don't know how you don't remember that. That happened, just so you know. At one point, Alice is like in town and Bonneville comes up and he's like, hey baby, you wanna hang? And they like make out or something, and he like tries to pressure her into sex.
I am out.
And at that point she's like, whoa, okay, that's enough, I'm gone. Like, this guy's a skis ball. That happens. Don't know how you remember that.
All I know is there's a flood coming. A big old flood.
And then the flood comes. Malcolm realizes that Bonneville is trying to get Lyra, so he goes in and takes Lyra first, and this is on the evening of the flood. The water is just coming up and rising and rising. It's raining really fucking hard. It looks like Toronto this year. He manages to escape with Alice and Lyra in his canoe. And they just kind of float downriver. They manage to tie up in the storm so they don't float all the way.
Okay, so they realize that they need to go to Chelsey because if they can go to, it's one of the, Chelsey has Oxford, and Oxford is one of the only schools that allow, like, can do the whole, like,
I require sanctuary.
Yeah, sanctuary. And so Malcolm realizes that if he brings Lyra to Oxford, then she will be safe, and the Magisterium and the creepy guy, Bonneville, cannot get her.
Yes, one thing! You did it!
I did a thing, and there are fairies coming up, because we're getting right into the Fairy Queen where, yeah, let's talk about some medieval literature.
Yeah. So this is when the book kind of, like, breaks down structurally wise, and, like, events don't quite really matter in the way they happen, like, things just happen.
It's very vignette-y. Like, there are moments where it kind of grounds stuff, where they're, like, talking about taking care of Lyra, and, like, having to get supplies to, like, deal with her diaper. That kind of stuff. And then there are just weird interactions.
And they get weirder the more you go on. Okay, so they're going down the river, and the first thing they want to do is they want to try and get to Oxford College. They get there, but, like, they're blocked off, and they kind of, like, miss their turn, and there's no way for them to go back because there's such a current down this river. They're like, okay, well, we tried Oxford. The next best thing we can do is go to see Lord Asriel. And all the way, like, Frank Bonneville is chasing them. They do, at one point, stop in this house, and they're taking shelter in this house, and, like, Bonneville comes in and chases them in, and he kills the guy who owns the house. They get chased out of this house, they get in the canoe, they keep going on the river. Then, at one point, they stop and they find some people who are in hiding from Mrs. Coulter in the Magisterium, and, like, they're kind of like political refugees hiding in the woods. And so Malcolm is sick at this point, and he kind of, like, passes out, and he realizes that there's a kid there, and the kid looks, like, really suspicious and is, like, kind of, like, you know, just poking around. And when he kind of wakes up, he realizes that the kid has gone to town and told the Magisterium that they're there, and that the baby that they're looking for is in town. So the soldiers or the police or whatever come in and they take Lyra away, and he's just like, oh my god, what do we do? So they figure out that they take him to this other, like, convent or something that's, like, in line with the Magisterium, where the convent that Lyra was originally wasn't. They're just kind of, like, there.
They break in, and there are, like, a bunch of babies, and, like, isn't Alice like, how are you gonna recognize her? Because there are a bunch of babies, and he's like, I'll recognize her.
And then he's like, oh shit, will I? But he does. So he, like, sinks in through the sewer. He manages to, like, blend in. And he comes in, like, just at the right moment where, like, the Magisterium has come in and they're like, we're gonna take Lyra out of this convent. And they're like, no, you can't do that. So they're, like, in the midst of baby swapping, and he's like, oh, this is Lyra, and takes her and goes. Then, this is where shit gets fucked up.
If it wasn't already. Because there's, like, this party and are people wearing masks and everyone seems too happy, and it gave me, like, hardcore Labyrinth vibes.
Yeah, people were wearing masks and they were at this internal party, but they were, like, dead people.
Yeah, I don't know if we were in hell or purgatory or we just...
They were just there, and I can't remember what the deal with them was, but they were creepy.
And they go to an island and there's a woman and she's helping them, and then they realize that she might be like a banshee maybe, and she's like, this is my baby now.
And she's got Lyra, and you're like,
yeah, and it's creepy, and
they have to, like, kind of trick or trade with her to, like...
I forget what they trade.
I think they trade, like, the Alethiometer, but the Alethiometer isn't in the thing that they trade, so they, like, trick her and get the baby back, and off they go. And then they end up at this party, and Bonneville is after them, and yeah, so there's, like, dead people or something, and they're all at, like, this permanent party, and none of them can see the kids. And then there's, like, the spirit of the river that comes up and lets them through the gate, and that's when they get out, and that's where shit gets real fucking dark, because that's when Bonneville catches up with Malcolm and Alice on this, like, island. It's flooded, and it, like, used to be, like, a graveyard, so there's a crypt. And so Malcolm thinks that Bonneville's in one place, and he walks away, and Bonneville comes and rapes Alice. And that was dark as fuck. I think he kills Bonneville. Didn't he, like, beat him to death?
They kill him. They kill Bonneville. I don't know if they crush his head with a rock or they shoot him.
Malcolm, like, hits him with a stick, I think. Yeah.
They kill him. Goodbye!
And you're like, they're free! You know, and then, of course, they're not, because they still have to get Lyra to Lord Asriel. And, the last leg of their journey, they're being dogged by the Magisterium. So they go down river, and it's like this kind of like three-way battle between Lord Asriel and the government, the Magisterium, and Malcolm. And Malcolm manages to get Lyra to Lord Asriel. He gets his arm broken in the process. Lord Asriel takes them away and manages to get Lyra into Georgian College as like a refugee, basically.
Yay!
Yeah. That is the end of La Belle Sauvage, and the next book is The Secret Commonwealth, which we have just found out takes place as Lyra being an adult.
So I liked this book. I don't really remember it, but I liked it when I read it, and I kind of want to reread it probably closer to when the next one's coming out. And I've been kind of like planning on rereading the rest of his Dark Materials, because when we reread The Golden Compass, there was a lot that I had forgotten, and there was a lot of like subtext that I missed because I was too young.
Yeah.
So I know that in that trilogy, as the trilogy progresses and it gets darker, it gets a lot more deep and philosophical and like dealing with like theology in like interesting ways. I'm interested to see what I pick up on now.
It's a good book. Like, I mean, the things I don't like are kind of how it rewrites Lord Asriel's character. Yeah. Like, I'm okay with it. And I found like the fact that it does get so fantastical a little weird.
Yeah, because in the other books it kind of like deals with, I wouldn't say magic, but mythology mostly, like religious mythology, and so that seems almost opposite to like straight up fantasy, we're going to an island where everyone might be dead, you know?
Yeah. The previous, his Dark Materials was kind of grounded in reality, like especially Lyra's world. I mean, you had armored bearers, but those were real physical things that you could see, versus like this mythical world that they kind of like stumble into and that may or may not exist. Like, I don't know, it's just really strange.
It was more kind of concerned with like, what is the soul?
Yeah.
Not like...
It was more kind of like an Odyssey journey, like, it would make more sense if they were like kind of like hallucinating all this stuff.
Yeah, like we had a really bad patch of bread.
Yeah.
And I guess it's also because they're quite young, they don't question stuff. Like if it was Lord Asriel, I kind of would see Lord Asriel as like Indiana Jones, just like, what fresh hell is this?
Yeah, right? It's kind of weird, and it kind of, in my head, takes place separate than...
But at the same time, you could almost argue that they are kind of reality hopping, and that the flood like breaks down the veil in the way that the subtle knife breaks down the veil.
I guess, you can kind of look at it that way, like they just kind of walk through holes that exist into different things. Yeah. I'll take that.
Because remember, you can't really see.
That's true. You never know quite when you're walking through a doorway sometimes.
I went through that entire book terrified that there were going to be specters. Like,
yeah.
You know what's nuts, though? Okay, if you look at it this way, when we were little and we were reading The Golden Compass...
I know exactly what you're going to say.
We were safe, man.
Yeah.
We were safe.
That was my exact thought, like, just before you said it, yeah.
Like, because we were too young to, like...
Yeah, we were like, oh, thank God, I'm so young.
Yeah, and now, like, if specters were legit, we'd be dead. So fucking, we'd be so dead so fast. So, if you have not read this book, you totally should, and you should totally read his Dark Materials and get excited for the BBC adaptation of The Golden Compass, which will hopefully do the book more justice than the original movie did. Not that the original movie was bad, it was just kind of, like, defanged a little bit.
Yeah.
So, kind of cool to, like, see it adapted in its, like...
Let us know what you think. Bye, guys!
Bye!